lining a flan. This is the sweet paste we made earlier. It's well relaxed, nice and cool. We're going to approach this in two ways. The way I'm going to roll this pastry out now is the more traditional way of rolling the pastry, which is on a floured marble with a rolling pin. The next method I'm going to use is between two pieces of greaseproof, using very, very little flour, if any flour at all. The floured pastry that I'm going to use, I'm going to crimp the edges and trim the top and bake. The pastry I roll between the two pieces of greaseproof, I'm going to allow our overhang. Once baked, I'm going to trim off. Not too much work on this pastry. Try and touch it as little as possible. If you make it too warm, it will start to split. Okay, that's a nice thickness. Ensure before you lift it off the board that it will be released, like so. Just one last little roll. Now there's two ways of lifting this pastry off the marble. You can roll it over the rolling pin and then roll it over the flan. But for me, perhaps the most quickest and simplest way of doing it is fold it into four. Bring the ring to the pastry. Lift the pastry up carefully. Place the corner in the centre and then unfold the pastry. This way, for me, you don't get any indents from when you're rolling over the rolling pin. Now, just a little tip. Sharp edges on a flan are perfect. To try and achieve this, take a small amount of dough and that can force the pastry in the corner. Dip this in some flour and then carefully lift the pastry into the centre of the flan, allowing the weight of the pastry to help with lining of the corners. Now we go for the corners. Lightly dust it with flour and then push. And as you can see, this pastry is forming a very sharp edge. That edge will obviously be mimicked on the other side of the pastry where it meets the flan ring and the baking sheet. Now the flan's been well lined, we need to trim off the edge. Now the trimming goes on the outside of the flan ring, not on the inside or on the top. And this is essential and it will allow you to crimp the top. If at this stage you've overworked the pastry, you'll find that it starts to shrink in and sink down the flan. And then with your forefinger and thumb and a finger from the other hand, just gently crimp the edge of the ring. As you can see, beautifully lined, nice and thin pastry, sharp corners, crimped top. Traditional way of lining a flan. We're going to roll this sweet pastry out for a flan ring in the more modern industry practice method. 2 pieces of greaseproof, sweet pastry in between. Now the beauty about this method is you don't have to touch the pastry. as you can see. No flour needed. Now we're going to allow this to rest slightly. We put a cartouche in the base, right to the sides very carefully, otherwise it'll puncture the pastry. Some baking beans, that'll rest in the fridge for about 30 minutes and then baked blind at 180. And what blind means is that it's set without colour. Now that tart case can be used for various things like a banana flan, an apple tart, fruit tart. However, if there are any holes in there, if you're baking something in there, for example an egg custard or a lemon curd or a lemon tart, the liquid would ooze out. So be mindful not to puncture the pastry before it goes into the oven.